Welcome to the Noodle Podcast. We are Kate and Max, and we love noodling on what we've learned by accident. This podcast is a space where we share how we get the best out of ourselves and the people we've worked with. In today's episode, one of us is in a bit of a mood. Spoiler, it's me. Share our journey of enlightenment as we look at how to create a shared route map for any group of people to feel confident that they're on the right track and that they like where they're headed.
So who are you today?
That's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
The topic that we're talking about has taken me into a little bit of a pit of despair. And so I think today I'm Negative Nelly.
Oh, so that means I have to be the flip, don't I? The flip side of Negative Nelly.
Are you
Positive Patty?
Positive Patty. Positive Patty. All right then.
So we're talking route map today.
Yeah.
But when we started talking about it, we were talking about why do you need one? What's important about when you're running a team, leading a team, that they know where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but we started with the end in mind, and that's when you got all dark.
Yes, and we'll talk about it when we get there. But yeah, I'm just trying to think of any project I've worked on where people really have learnt the lessons that the people working on the project were telling everyone about the things that did or did not work. Yeah, and I can only think of negative
Horror
examples.
stories.
Yes, which is such a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
Apart from when we have got actual control over what we do. So if you're part of a bigger project and you can't actually shift the direction of it because you can see the car crash about to happen, but you can't get anyone else to apply the brakes, that's tricky. And that's what I'm thinking about for our podcast listeners is how do you stay positive when those things seem to keep on repeating?
So should we start at the beginning then, rather than the car crash?
Yes, I think
Says Positive Patty.
I think you've got the answers. I'm all ears.
So let's start at the very beginning.
Okay, go.
So you are working with your team. Where would you start if you are planning some work?
So when you're doing your scoping,
Yep.
what's the thing?
Yep.
What's happening now? Where do we want to go? What would be the best possible if we could wave a magic wand? What would be the best possible? If we couldn't do that, what would be the next best answer? What might get in the way? What's our action plan?
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love a bit of a structure. You can do that in a conversation or a team meeting, not just a big project or, a why are we here conversation. Okay, fine.
Yeah. But Negative Nelly might sit in the corner moaning about what's wrong, what's not going to work, etc., etc.
We've tried this before.
Yeah, didn't work last time, don't see why it's going to work this time, etc., etc. Positive Patty would say, each time we usually edge a bit further. So it doesn't have to be that we solve everything this time, just that we do it better than before. We shift the dial. I'm starting to sound like I'm talking about corporate blah, blah.
Corporate blah, blah. Okay, but Negative Nelly says, what about the fact that when you're scoping this piece of work or the shift that you want to make, it's so difficult, you can't really see what things are going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
And so you work with the best information you have right now. Mm-hmm. But what if that's so wrong? We haven't worked out all the cases we need to work on, and we don't understand the regulation that's coming down the line because it's not fully written yet. What if that means the scope is wrong and therefore everything you spend your time on after that is for nothing? It becomes chaos.
Oh, is that all?
Yes. Please picture a big thundercloud above my head. Lightning strike. That's what I've got to say about that.
So it's the course correct stuff, isn't it? Which is, if that's the case, you need to know early as possible that things are different. So there's a bit of, okay, if we have no idea, then you've got to honestly admit as a team, right, we don't know. So this is going to be a test and learn as we go. A bit like some of the agile stuff. You've got to just have a go and then check. But you don't have a go for 6 months and then realise that you're off course. That would be really foolish. So you've got to bring it back a bit and go, what do we know now? And do we need to course correct? What do we know now? Do we need to course correct? Because I think I've been in that situation before where someone gives me an objective for something
Yeah.
And I've been working, several objectives, and one of them you look at it and go, well, that's just, it's not possible anymore because ...
Yes.
But it still stays on the shopping list of things I'm supposed to have done.
Yes.
Disingenuous.
Yeah.
Being marked down. Yeah, but you didn't deliver that objective.
Yeah, but the department I was supposed to do it for doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how am I supposed to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So changing things like that earlier in the journey and having proper conversations about it stops all this, some of the stuff you're talking about there, which is like everyone just doing the whole, oh God.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, you did mention that. You've said about, teams you've worked with who are really good at having a weekly meeting of what have we learnt, what do we need to keep doing, what do we need to switch up or down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So plan, but then measure. So then we're on to...
Before measure. So do you remember that organisation that I worked with for a bit who wanted to... I don't know, it wasn't culture change, but it was like strategic shift for what the organisation was going to be doing. And they had a new leader in who had great ideas for what needed to happen and came up with 12 different areas that people needed to focus on.
12?
12.
Only 12?
I think, well, it was 12 and 4 of them had a subset. So and he really was big on collaboration. Yeah. He wanted everyone to understand their part in this.
Yeah.
And so he ran session after session after session across the whole business, which was thousands of people. So everyone could sit down, understand these 12, actually 16 things that they were supposed to be doing. That each had a different name, different number, and to describe it, he would have one of those artists come along and write and draw a route map, like you said at the beginning, of what this would be and where it would get them to. So he was doing the sort of visioning and the point and what we want to move away from, what we want to move away to. But it was so flipping complicated. The artist was basically filling up paper that took up the whole wall of a very big auditorium. So everyone should have been clear, in theory, about what their targets were and why the targets were there and what their part was. But it was just so many. So what happens when you've got too many measures, please? Positive, Patty.
Well, I think you've already said we lose the will to live is your answer. So you've got to have less, haven't you? So I would say that it's back to the one thing. So even if there are 12 things, it's like, okay, but how do we turn that down into the one thing we need to focus on today or this week, or simplify it, because you can't keep it all in mind. I always remember playing netball, and I apologise to listeners if I've given this example before, but when I used to play netball, you come off having played a frenetic 15 minutes, and one of my favourite coaches used to just go round every single player and just say, one thing in this next quarter I want you to do is. Okay. So we still needed to win the game. We still knew what the rules of the game were. We still knew we needed to play in a certain way with one another and from all the things we'd done in training. But in that next 15 minutes, the one thing I want you to focus on is staying really tight with, or, intercepting that, or... Okay. Really nice to sort of say, okay, it's all right having the big picture, but if it's that complicated, I don't know what to focus on. Yeah. Great example. I don't remember you talking about that before. I wonder if we can get hold of that coach and get them to help with some of our clients. So I think too many targets, absolutely. But I think the thing you said there was really good but he was involving people in it. Mm-hmm. So there was a dialogue. There's nothing worse than being delivered your objectives with no participation whatsoever, and that the measures are decided for you. I mean, that's not a great start, is it? Mm-mm. No. It's like someone giving you your holiday destination. I'm working with a company where the top person sets the objectives for the company. Fair enough. That's what happens. But there isn't really any interpretation of what that means going down the levels. And so they just get taken verbatim. And so it means nothing by the time it gets down to level 8. How they're going to deliver on this stuff that affects the whole company. So nobody gets an input. And they don't look at them until 12 months later or 6 months later at their mid-year or end-of-year performance review. And no one's really that bought in. So you're right, of course. That's like giving everybody a holiday destination. Here's your envelope, open it. That's where you're going. Have fun. Maybe not what you would choose maybe not what you choose. I think I remember one of the phrases as well, because sometimes there is specifics that you need to focus on, and then sometimes there's more broad, especially when you're leaning into the unknown, because you referenced it earlier about, we don't know how we're going to do this, or we don't know what the regulations are going to be. That phrasing, and it must have come from some work around the Olympics, but that does it make the boat go faster? So if we're going to change things, every time we are thinking about improving things or changing things, having that focus on whatever the organisational version of does it make the boat go faster is a great way of asking the question, which is, how does this make sense with the bigger idea?
Yeah. Okay, all right. Let's imagine the boat is going a little bit faster. We're all on it.
A little rowing boat.
We get where we're going.
Little rowing boat.
All right, and then a police boat draws up alongside us. Excuse me, we want to audit you. We want to check you.
Audit.
Yeah.
Love a bit of audit.
So many friends who are teachers, and Ofsted comes along, UK regulation for education. And in itself, that measuring can be so stressful. People leave their jobs or worse. And okay, positive Patty. What's your spin on that? What's your reframe for that, please?
See, now I would say that one of the great ways of making sure that your team is doing the right thing is putting yourself in the shoes of those people that are going to come in and do the audit early on. So you stand in their shoes and say, and what would Ofsted say? Or what would internal audit say? Or what would risk and compliance or health and safety, whoever's your version of some sort of control check people.
Yeah.
So that all of you stand in the shoes of and look at what you're doing from that perspective. Because the second that you do that, and I mean really look, don't just intellectually just sort of go and moan about how annoying they are, because that's just from your perspective. It's really trying to be them. Because I think when you look through that lens, you see things slightly differently. And it can tighten things up for you and say, actually, we need to do more of this. Or, okay, we see the reasons for that.
Yeah. That's nice. That's when you understand what everyone's in this for, is ultimately to try and make things better and to do it in a good way.
Yeah, rather than getting into that bun fight zone where it's fractious and it's like a competition to see who wins. I've been in some shocking ones of those.
Yeah.
Where, the person in the control team who's coming in to do the checks is trying to win and you're trying to win.
Yes.
And it's all like points scoring, and it's like everyone's lost sight of the intent then.
It is really tricky, isn't it? It does come down to human behaviour, because if you have built your reputation on doing things a certain way, getting success for your team, for your business, then someone comes along and says, no, not like that, or what you've done is wrong. You're going to internalise that as criticism and rejection at the heart of it.
Yeah.
Don't tell me I'm wrong. I don't like the sound of that. That feels bad. Now I feel like my job might be in danger. I'm going to have to fight. So quite a lot of the stuff that we do around why do people act like that? Yeah. And when you notice yourself, reacting in a way that's just not helpful, how can you pull yourself back from there? It's to see that bigger picture. You mentioned cake earlier. When it comes to this whole how do you get everyone to see all the perspectives and understand why we're doing what we're doing? I've just got lost at cake and started getting hungry. What were you saying?
I use the cake metaphor, but it links to this idea of everybody being in it together. So I think that's your link there.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking with teams and people leading teams, I always say that the danger is that when we set an objective for a team, that we divide it up as if it's, could you go and make a slice of cake, Kate? Or negative Nelly, can't remember who you are. So, could you make so each member of the team goes away to make a slice of cake because the challenge is we've got to make a cake.
Yeah.
And then you come back with a slice of carrot cake. Someone else comes back with a bit of chocolate cake. Someone else comes back with a bit of jam tart. Maybe somebody comes back with a bit of,
red velvet cake.
Red velvet
where my
cake.
mind went. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then you put all those slices together and it's not a cake.
Well, it might be the most delicious cake ever. It depends how you cut it up. Yes.
Yeah. Whereas actually a team shared endeavour is, what's the cake we need to make together? there's the conversation that we need to
Yes.
make. Okay, now one person, you're in charge of ingredients, another person, you're in charge of the process. But none of us can do it without the others.
Can I be in charge of quality control?
Yes, always quality control. Yeah. Which is true. There is a need for that, isn't there? Throughout the process and at the end. Is this the cake we intended to make? But I think that idea that we need shared objectives, shared goals, not individual goals, reduces the chances of people being a bit competitive, which is what you were talking about, that whole, I need to win. My slice is better than your slice. Look at my cake slice. And it's like, well, that's not helpful.
So let's imagine we've got the cake. What now? How do we work out whether this is the cake we wanted and the cake we need?
Have we been successful in making this cake? What did we learn along the way? Yes.
Which is where I was saying, I don't know if people ever really... They're so busy being pleased that this thing has finished and ready to get on with the next thing. How do you get that, this is what we learned, stuff to stick? Yes, do it along the way. But generally, at the end of a project, there's a whole wash up, and it's somebody's job, tick box exercise, to do the what we learnt. And who looks at it?
Yes, the retroflective, that bit. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because if you just do it at the end, I do think that people go through the motions sometimes. Because actually they're more interested in what's coming next rather than looking back. So I think there's something about explaining the past in the context of what's coming next. And if you've got nothing to apply it to, then those lessons learned are just hanging in the air, aren't they? Because they're just a bit like, we can all agree with you, but we've got nothing to attach it to. So I think there's a need to draw direct connection to something else that's coming.
And to have someone who really is responsible for owning the bridge between this finishing and what happens next, so that you put we call it putting the chocks under, chocks under an aeroplane's wheels so it doesn't roll backwards.
Yeah.
You've made the change, whatever it is that you shifted from to, how do you make sure it doesn't slip back? Because often things want to return to the way they were before, even if that was worse. That was what was known.
Yeah.
So keeping things running in this new way can be the really tricky thing, and making sure things don't go underground.
Yes. But I think you've got to draw it back as well to individuals. This is why I think the little and often is better. And the regular monthly or quarterly. So you do, okay, but how does that affect me? What have I learnt?
Yeah.
What about us as a team? Okay, but what about us as an organisation? So you're really making sure the learning is going right in and all the way out.
Yeah. Sometimes you can cement that with a party.
Is that to learn some more lessons?
But the recognition, how do we mark this? How do we celebrate success?
Yes.
Or the fact that we got through it and we're still standing. I can't shed negative Nelly today.
But you can have some laughs, can't you, at the end? You can have that whole, do you remember when?
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't think that was possible, or when that went wrong, or, so the stories of the journey, they can be fun to retell. They can be.
Yeah, because they come sort of war stories, don't they?
Yeah.
So next time, should we talk more about what happens when you are socialising with work colleagues? Because that's a whole other bunch of stuff, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Yeah.
When we go to more than cake.
Yeah. This has been a really tricky topic to think about. But also, over the years, how many things did you do that you thought might be impossible? How many things were you part of that did shift even just a little bit?
Yes.
Even if the end objective wasn't hit, something moved.
Something moved, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. So, socialising next time then.
All right.
Could I have a different person though? I don't want negative Nelly. Thanks.
I'm just going to have to go. Blah, blah, blah. Off she goes.
You can find a reminder of the concepts and noodles we've mentioned in this episode's blurb, and get daily snippets on Instagram at noodle_space. Don't forget to subscribe, share and leave us a review. We love hearing your stories too on the chat at www.noodle.space.